Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Guys on Sports. We're here. Rocky's out of town. And due to some unforeseen circumstances, me and Mark are coming at you guys live from the Casa. So, Mark,
No, I
it's
seen the
time of the sports
circumstances.
here. How's it going, man?
It's good. I seen the circumstances. The circumstances were a cracked screen. That's what the circumstances were. They weren't
What were the
unforeseen.
circumstances?
They were very visible. Very
Well, they
visible
were they were unforeseen until we seen it.
until you seen it.
Yeah, that would be unforeseen.
Well, I mean, you
Anyway,
did drive half an hour before checking your laptop to make sure it wasn't cracked.
well, number one, not a laptop. Number two, who checks their laptop to see if it's cracked every time they
Me,
leave the house?
me,
You?
just like I
Yeah,
never
okay.
dated girls below my
Anyway,
age.
sure. Thank you already. Somebody needs to put a governor on you, bro.
Yeah,
Right?
I agree.
Yeah. All right.
Probably
Hey, so how's your week, man?
not bad. Stressful. Work. Found out I get my survey next week, so under a little bit of stress. It's good though. It's all good, man. It's gravy. Uh, got a new pickleball paddle. Can't wait to use it this weekend. Check us out. We're Guys on Pickleball. We're going to start streaming our games live, which we should
That's
do.
right. All
That'd be
right.
hilarious.
So,
At
uh,
least video recordings of us in slow motion, whiffing
that'd
on
be fun.
balls. That would be
Not
fun.
whiffing. All right. So here's the
Well, you
question I
whiffed a couple
have.
times.
Here's the question I have, Mark. Let's try to stick to the show. Yeah. So the question I have is with everything that's going on, I wanted to give you something a little bit lighter. All the talking heads are talking about the NBA All-Star game, the product versus what the NHL just put on and the Four Nations face off. I'm going to watch the game tonight. I'm sure you are. But what can the Pro Bowl do or the NFL do to breathe some life back into the Pro Bowl? Because as much as people are talking about the NBA All Star and how bad it was, what's even scarier is that nobody's talking about the NFL one, which they all, but no pun intended, have punted on. Is there any way we could get back to a place where we care about the Pro Bowl, or are those days gone?
Yeah, I think it's an easy fix. You just stop hosting the Pro Bowl. It has become a goddamn calamity. It is the laughing joke of all-star sports. You know, I was watching clips where they compared the Pro Bowl 20 years ago versus now, and
Oh wow,
there used to be some pride in it, man. There used to be hard hits. There'd be guys that they would talk about afterwards that be penalized for too hard of a hit in an all-star, in a Pro Bowl in an all-star format. Whereas now it's just who cares, man? I don't want to see those guys out there without pads on, running around doing a bunch of fucking flag pulling. It's awful, dude. It's so bad.
I agree. It's awful. It's unbecoming of the sport. Think they had to fix it or get rid of it and do something else.
I feel like somebody in a boardroom somewhere said we should deconstruct this game a little bit and give the fans what they really want, which is to see these players as people. No,
I don't
it's
think
not what
that's
we
true.
want, man.
I don't think that's
It's
true at all. I think it's on the players.
it's a hard sell, dude. It's so bad.
I think the players bailed on the game before they started changing things, and that's why they had to change things to try to get the players back invested. But I think it's going to be a long time before we see it return. Hopefully, there's some pressure put on by how much people are talking up hockey, but I really don't think it'll do much. Anyway, before we get into the rest of the show, I just want to remind you guys to go check us out on all socials at GON Podcast. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, but mostly you catch us on TikTok. That's what you're going to see most of our content. Go there, follow, comment. Mark got cooked last week. We'll talk about that at the end of the show for some of his takes. So stay tuned for that. We also want you to get on the YouTube, like, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell and listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Guys on Draft, Guys on Sports. We're there. So this week, we're finishing our series on positions where we're talking about fallers and risers. We've done all the skill positions. We're here landing at quarterback, and it's apropos because I mean, for two guys to talk about it seems just right. I think three guys giving opinions about quarterbacks and fantasy just doesn't bode well. We could get into Superflex maybe a little bit, but we're going to do what we've done the last few weeks. We'll talk a little bit about quarterback draft strategy and how you approach it. And then we'll name one guy that finished the top 12 quarterback last season that we believe could fall out, and one guy that we believe can move up into the top 12. So, Mark, QB draft strategy, I think most people are well aware that you're either grabbing one of the top three guys very high or you're waiting on quarterback. If you're not doing that, I think you're doing things wrong. So let's not waste our time there. Let's talk more dynasty and let's talk more super flex. Who are the quarterbacks we're targeting after that first tier, and how soon after are we?
So if we're talking super flex, I mean, you should be going you should be getting two quarterbacks off the board in the first 3 rounds, unless you just decide to punt quarterback because you waited till the third round and now you're drafting between the likes of like Drake May and Derek Carr and guys like that. Obviously, everybody wants in Superflex it's a race to Josh Allen, it's a race to Lamar Jackson, and then after that, that next tier comes in of those quarterbacks that are pretty high floor and could be potentially high ceiling. Uh, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts with the rushing touchdown upside because of the brotherly shove.
Mm.
Kyler Murray, you got some guys, guys like that. But I don't mind. I don't mind trying to get a very strong quarterback out of the gate. Second round, reserving that for one of the best playmakers on the board because there's going to be a bunch since everybody goes quarterback really, really heavy, right? So it's not unheard of to come back in round two and get Justin Jefferson in round two, get Saquon Barkley in round two because all the quarterbacks are
Yeah.
flying furiously
Mm-hmm.
off the board. Then I come back in the third round. I'm going to target one of those guys that people are a little gun shy on and they get torn up in media, as to having down years and their busts, such as Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence will have a return to fantasy relevancy next year. If you can come back in the third round and draft that tier of quarterback, then it's worth doing it. But if you don't get there, then you may as well just punt and wait and draft your second quarterback later on.
Yeah. So hmm, I guess that is a strategy. I mean, the Trevor Lawrence tier is. I mean, who else is on that tier? I
It's
guess
going to
in a
be,
super flex, they're going pretty quick. So,
yeah, it'll be
and for
your Trevor
anybody listening that
Lawrence.
doesn't is unsure of what a super flex is, just a league where you have an additional flex where you can basically have a slot for an offensive player where you could put a quarterback in. And I mean, some of your low end quarterbacks are going to be more valuable than some of your skill position players. So there's a high premium quarterbacks. People that have joined our league find that out. Even after you tell them, they find out the hard way sometimes. So yeah, don't wait on QB if you're in a super flex for sure. So I guess the more interesting conversation is in dynasties, what kind of value are you putting on rookie quarterbacks? Are you still because I know our dynasties, it's still heavily based on skill position players, getting them at a cheap price on a contract. But I know guys that put an emphasis trying to get a starting quarterback for 3 or 4 years, not have to worry about it. Where do you sit with that in the dynasty? Are you like, is there value to you in Cam Ward, Shador Sanders going into this year's fantasy season in the dynasty format, or are you just kind of letting them lie and hoping to get them later on?
I think in a league like ours, yeah, where it's a super flex dynasty league, I think there's definitely value in grabbing one of those guys, right? Especially one of the, someone that lands in a really good situation that's going to start right away. Between Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, I'm blanking on there's a third quarterback that's projected to
Jackson
come out.
Dart.
Is it? I
It's
can't remember,
Jackson
but
Dart.
all right.
Jackson Dart.
There's three quarterbacks that are projected to be rookie starters, right? So there is some instant value there, especially for me. The more mobile they are, like a Jaden Daniels that comes out, a more mobile quarterback is a little bit more valuable to kind of reach and go up and grab, especially in a dynasty superflex. But if we're talking just regular straight dynasty, I wait, man. I'll try to get a quarterback to come off the board in like the third or fourth round of a dynasty rookie draft. I'm too busy trying to A, get one of those studs that come out, and then B, get one of those low key guys that are the quote unquote diamond in the roughs that could definitely pop off in the second round before I really target quarterback.
All right, so we won't waste any time. I don't think there's a lot of meat on the bone there with the quarterbacks. But where there is a conversation is what we talked about is our fallers and risers. So we'll start with our let's start with our risers. I'll go to you first, just because I'm talking right now and it feels better. Uh, who's your guy that you see breaking that top 12? Now, if you look, anybody that's listening, go look at end of season leaders, see who is where they finished, and that's your top 12. Your first 12 quarterbacks you see there, you'll see the total points for the season. You can look at all the stats there, but anybody that's in that top 12, we're saying one is going to fall out, one is going to rise up. Mark, who's rising?
For me, it's easy. It's Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams finishes the QB 16. He's got a very offensive minded Ben Johnson coming to town with a bevy of weapons already. DJ Moore's under contract for a long time. They went out and got Roma Dunze. They may move on from Keenan Allen. He was a 1 year rental. He may stay. They may bring in another guy like a Cooper Cup. They might reach and try to grab somebody in the draft in the second round, even. You have Cole Kmet, who had a down year. I really thought he would have had a much better year with a rookie quarterback, but I think Kmet bounces back. You have DeAndre Swift and Rashawn Johnson that I really think that Ben Johnson is going to view them as his Sonic and Knuckles like he did in
Mhm.
Detroit. So I do think that I really think that Caleb is set up in year two. They forced him to really work through his progressions. They forced him to
Mhm.
hold on to the ball, and it didn't bode well because their offensive line was absolute garbage. So it was just a recipe for disaster. So I think this year, I think they addressed that with the cap space. They have the third or fourth most cap space. They're going to address O line. They might address O line even through the draft. Look for that offensive line to solidify. Look for Caleb Williams to have some time, and damn, he's gonna do some damage with it this year.
Yeah, not surprised you said that. It's close to home, and I do think all of the things you said are true. If Ben Johnson could hold up his end of the bargain, I think that you'll see Caleb Williams develop the way he's supposed to. He definitely flashed last year. He definitely seen some rookie stuff that you're used to seeing from quarterbacks. So I'm not, overreacting to any of that. I do want to bring up a guy that I think we all overreacted to. We did it on the show as well, but Bryce Young is a guy I'm surprised. I guess I'm not surprised, but I am surprised with how we talk about some other guys, where he finished, the circumstances that, kind of facilitated that, and how I feel like he's a little bit of an afterthought right now. Um, I'm gonna try to make this nice and tidy. But Bryce Young finished his QB 20 last season. He was 84 points out of QB 12. Um, the first 6 games of the season for Bryce Young consisted of 3 games that he didn't play, and the other 3 games that he did play in that 6 week span, he had a total of 6 fantasy points. So essentially, he had 6 games to start the season with no production. Now, I think that the Bryce Young we've seen after the bye, even going into the bye, was improved, but after the bye, where he finished the season strong, I'd say strong plus, with all games being double digit fantasy points and more than half of them being plus 20 fantasy point games. I think those first 6 games are basically missed games. So you're looking at a guy with 11 weeks of production on a team that wasn't laced with talent, who finished 84 points out of the top 12. I think the way he played down the stretch, keeping in mind that we're hoping they add some weapons there. I don't think it's crazy to think that if he plays those other 6 games relatively close to the way he played the end of the season, that he can average 13 points in those games to break the top 12. So for me, looking at some of the guys that are in the top 12 and some of the guys that are ahead of him, and some of the guys like Drake May that we're kind of shoehorning in to be one of those guys or looking for that breakout year, I don't see why Bryce Young going into his third year can improve marginally and put up average QB numbers and be there.
Yeah, I like Bryce Young going into this year. I think that benching really kind of lit the fire where he was able to kind of take a step back and say, you know what, I can't let this city down. My team, it's difficult when your team gives up an absolute haul for you, right? That not only puts the spotlight on you, but that puts the microscope over top of you too. Just as Ricky Williams, who Mike Ditka famously traded his entire draft to go get. And Ricky Williams, it was some tough sledding at first for Ricky Williams in New Orleans. Then he went to Miami, and he was the Ricky Williams that we all expected in the NFL. So Bryce Young, he had a rough go of it, but I mean, to be fair, he didn't have a whole lot to work with around him. I think this year, I think they're going to maybe not play from behind quite so much. I think they
Mm-hmm.
have a pretty decent younger roster. Um, I really like Xavier Legette. I really like Jatavion Sanders. You have Jonathan Brooks, who's coming off of that second injury now. They just paid Chibba Hubbard, and he started to play really, really well. I think he might be all right next year.
Yeah, I'll just from week 8 on, he did not have a fantasy outing that wasn't double digits. He had one or two that were low double digits, but the rest of them were 14 points and above. I think he can easily improve upon that, and I think he's a guy you could get for dirt cheap. And
Yeah,
here's my thing: I don't pick him up as my QB1. I pick him up as a QB2, and I'm crossing my fingers that he breaks out, and I
yeah.
have something on my roster to either start or insurance or trade, whatever. But we'll move from Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, and let's get to our fallers. Who's the guy in the top 12 that you see falling out of the top 12 this season?
I think this one's pretty easy. I kind of cherry picked this. Sam Darnold, solely because we don't know what kind of situation he's going to be in next year, right? We don't even know if he's going to start. Minnesota really likes JJ McCarthy. They bring in they bring in Daniel Jones. They're not bringing in Daniel Jones to be the quarterback 3 there, right? They're bringing Daniel Jones in basically to say, all right, now we have a guy that's a seasoned veteran to rely on when JJ McCarthy goes down, just like they did Sam Darnold, right? And Sam Darnold had a
Yep.
fantastic year. I don't think he deserves it, but I also don't think that it's going to stick. I don't know that he is in Minnesota. And if he is, there's not a better producing quarterback from last year that's on a shorter leash than Sam Darnold. It's gonna take one bad half for them to yank
You
Darnold
think
and
so?
try to.
I don't think it's that tight.
I don't know, man. I think they really do like JJ McCarthy a lot, and I think Darnold hasn't panned out anywhere else. Darnold's not the future there. I know that. So I know teams nowadays they've learned from their mistakes. They want to get to their future fast. So I think they're going to see what they have in McCarthy, and then know that they can fall back on Daniel Jones, which isn't a terrible fallback. I mean, we see what happens to giant superstars when they leave New York. They turn into
Just
Hall of Famers.
unnecessary digs, and maybe teams are moving on to their future too fast. Is all I'll say there. And a perfect case in point is the guy I'm going to talk about next, Jared Goff, who I think they moved on to their future with Matt Stafford. Maybe too quick. I mean, it worked out. They won the Super Bowl, but just saying they could have had him in tow and kept all those picks. But Jared Goff finished as QB6 last year. The vaunted Detroit offense. Uh, there's a lot here. I'll try to keep this neat and tidy as well. The two major issues with Detroit that I see, well, the one for him is they lost their OC. We got to see what that looks like coming into next year. But really, what I want to key on is Jared Goff at QB6 finished closer points wise to QB11 than he did to QB5. So there was a sizable drop off from him and the guy in front of him. about 30 to 40 points from between him and 12. He was heavily buoyed by some monster games in the middle of the season. After starting off very slowly, and in between those monster games, it looked kind of normal-ish, more like a QB 13, 14 than it did a QB 6. I say going into the season, third year Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he's going to be an absolute animal next season. I think they're going to struggle a little bit without Ben Johnson. And I think that Jared Goff is going to struggle to put up the same points he did this year because I don't see him having those 45-point games. And that's all you need for him to drop out of the top 12. I say he scores 60 less points on the year next year. And I see him as like a QB 13, 14. He'll still be right around on the edges there, but without the rushing upside, you're relying on efficiency and touchdown throws. I don't see it for Jared Goff next season.
I will give pushback here. I think they found a very successful recipe this year. Losing Ben Johnson hurts, but they're not going to bring in somebody who's the polar opposite of Ben Johnson. They're going to bring in somebody that's similar, maybe even has been in uh, you know, a relatively similar coaching tree or from the same coaching tree. I don't really know his history. That's why I paused there. I couldn't remember where Ben Johnson really came from. But they're going to bring in somebody that's offensive minded, right? They're not going to get off of that game plan. And I think that as Jared Goff's weapons marinate even more in their careers, Amon-Ra St. Brown is just getting better. Sam Laporta had a down year by Sam Laporta rookie standards. I think Sam Laporta is going to have a fantastic year. Jamison Williams, if he can stay out of trouble and stop being such a dirtbag on the field. Jamison Williams is a solid wide receiver, and they might end up. Who knows, man? You might see like. Can you imagine Cooper Kupp going there as their slot receiver? I think Goff has a lot of weapons, and you're absolutely right. Jahmyr Gibbs, like if we thought Jahmyr Gibbs was good last year, this is going to be a ridiculous year for Jahmyr Gibbs because they're going to phase out Monty even a little bit more, and Gibbs is going to be an integral part of that offense.
Yeah, I don't disagree with a lot there, but I do think that there is listen, Bill Parcells had Ray Handley on his coaching staff and recommended him. And he's probably one of the worst coaches in Giants history, at least up to the last 5 years. But just because a guy is familiar with the system doesn't make him Ben Johnson. I still think there's questions there. He could try to run the same system. Does he command the same type of respect in the room? Does he have the same rhythm with his play calling? Does he favor running the ball more than Ben Johnson did? I mean, whoever it is, he's his own guy. He's going to try to make his way and leave an imprint on the team. I just think there's a little unsurety there. But really, what I'm worried about is him repeating the touchdown throwing performance to be there again because
That's fair.
there's not if he doesn't do that, there's no rushing to fall back on. He could throw the ball for 300 yards a game, and Gibbs could run in two scores, and you get in 12 points out of Jared Goff. That's why I think you've seen such highs and lows from him last season. So, um, who's your? Did you gave your guy that's fallen already, right?
Yeah, it was Darnold.
Yeah. Okay, so QB stuff is in the books. We're gonna do QBs more in depth, especially going up to the draft. So if you're listening to this, come back for that. That'll be before the draft, obviously, within the next month, probably after the combine. We'll talk about some of those rookies. But I did want to get to your viral TikTok, semi-viral TikTok, and what you said about who was it? The Philadelphia Eagles, and just give you a short chance to tell us exactly what you meant if you were if everything came across because people don't know those clips, they're not played in their entirety. They're chopped up to kind of deliver the message in a digestible way. I mean, it is what Mark said. There's some stuff that's cut out, so I don't know if you wanted to touch on it.
Yeah, I'm really tempted to just double down here, quite honestly, just because of the hatred that I have for that fan base. To say that I got cooked is because it was like it's a bunch of rabid animals out in the woods just waiting for me to step out of my yard is all that really is. It's hard for them to digest, but again, Philly sports fans have a short-term memory, right? They forget what it was like when Jalen Hurts lost A.J. Brown and they had like 7 total yards of offense in that playoff game the year before. Like, it was absolutely astounding. Now obviously they bring in Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley is a fantastic piece, right? So now you have a little bit more stability, but what they're forgetting is, dude, they were relatively injury bug free, right? So 21 of 22 starters were on the field in the Super Bowl, and Kansas City did not have that luxury. Listen, I think Philly's got a really good team. I just don't know that it's as powerful as Philly fans want you to believe. I've been hearing that every year for my entire life. I'm 46 years old. I want to know where the other 44 Lombardi trophies are that they promise every year of my life. They now have 2 to show, but it's hard. It's hard to get back there. It's hard to do it again. Just ask the Chiefs. They repeated. They couldn't do it a third time. They did get smoked. And, Philly did a fantastic job. But I also truly believe that had Detroit not have 21 players on IR, that it would have been a much, much different looking game. And the one
Yeah,
thing
I
people came
agree.
at me,
I
people
agree.
came
And
at me
people,
about the whole Jaden Daniels take, and like, oh, we beat the guy that beat Detroit. Now we suck. And the point is no, Washington exposed the weaknesses that Detroit had, and Jaden Daniels was able to service that. But then you saw who Jaden Daniels truly was against a better defense. So had Detroit's defense been there to stop Jaden Daniels, it would have been Detroit. It would have been Philly in the NFC Championship game, and I think the outcome would have been a lot different.
I can't argue with that too much. I know Birds fans will say, yeah, they would have smoked them too. I
Yeah.
think deep down in their hearts, before Detroit was injured, they knew to, at the very least, respect Detroit. So yeah, I think there's a different world that does happen. I will also say that the Eagles do have a good team, like I said, and I don't take any credit. I mean, you do have to play. This happens every year. The chips fall how they may, and you win your championship whatever way you win it. So you can't take that away from them. But I do. I think they also went overboard with the comments. I think they were saying you're ridiculous, and I don't think that's true. All right. So that's in the books. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to this quarterback episode. Do you have a different guy who you think might ascend to QB1 next year, or do you think we remain status quo?
Uh, no, man, you're looking at the same 2 guys, probably QB1, QB2. You're looking at Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. What I will say is, if there is somebody that can dethrone them next year, it will be the return of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, just because he is such a gamer, I know for a fact that he took it personally missing the playoffs. I know for a fact that he did not like that Cincinnati didn't look good for the first half of the season. That second half of the season was more Joe Burrow. You get a full season of Joe Burrow like that and staying healthy, Joe, Joe Burrow is going to threaten QB1 this year.
All right, guys. Well, that is the short QB risers and fallers episode. We encourage you to go follow the channel on YouTube. That's at GON Podcast, the Guys on Network, Guys on Sports, Guys on Draft, and also at GON Podcast on TikTok. We have a whole series on these positions. We have over 150 episodes of this show. We have other shows. We have a bunch of content and a bunch of stuff for you to get into, mainly getting you guys ready for your fantasy seasons. So please like and subscribe, follow, comment, DM us the questions that you have, and we will surely and quickly answer you. Mark, any parting words?
Keep your eyes on our upcoming channel regarding pickleball. It's going to be called Guys on Pickle.
That's
Um,
not what it's not what it's going to be called.
Artist workshops, but it sounds cool. Guys on
All
Pickle.
right.
Come check us out
All right. Peace.
later.
Hey, we're about to run out of time, so I'm gonna send you another one, and you have the blind things, right?
I erased them, but I think, let me see if I can remember real quick.
That's smart. Why would you erase them? I told you
Because
to
they're
save them.
they're on the marker board, retard. I know what it is anyway.